Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Paint Night Live. I'm Chris Williams, and I'm here in the Plaid Crafts studio. Welcome, everyone. I know you all are kind of just finding us and joining us. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so thrilled to have you here with us again tonight, and I say we because Stephen White is joining me here in the studio this evening. Hey, Stephen.
Hey, Chris. How are you?
Good. For those of you that are new and maybe don't know Stephen, he's one of our A-team members that helps us with all our audio video needs. And Stephen is also the most fantastic moderator there is. So we're all blessed to have Stephen in the house tonight.
The pressure's on now. I better not lose my my mojo here.
Yeah, Stephen is going to be moderating and helping us with our camera views this evening. So if you have any questions, be sure and write them in the chat. Stephen's going to try and either answer them for you or relay them on to me. So we're glad that Stephen's here with us today. And just to let you know, we are dual streaming tonight. So welcome to our Facebook viewers. We are streaming on Plaid Crafts Facebook page. And welcome to our YouTube viewers. Boy, if I could get that out. YouTube viewers. We are also streaming on the Plaid Crafts channel on YouTube. So welcome, everyone.
Yeah, welcome, guys. We have lots of folks tuning in, so we are excited to see you. Thanks for letting us know where you're watching from. We always love to see that as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most happy to have you all in the house tonight.
Chris, I was going to say, Chris, we have a tiny little canvas today.
We do have a tiny, it's only a 6x6, Stephen.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that because I knew somebody was going to ask soon. So, yeah, it is a 6x6. Let's go ahead and get that piece of information out there.
Yeah, we're working with a 6x6 stretched artist canvas tonight. I'm going to actually be painting on a canvas panel that measures 6x6, but this surface is a 6x6 stretched canvas. We're also going to be painting with the original formula of FolkArt acrylics, and that is, I'll pull up one here just to show you. This is FolkArt, and this happens to be True Blue. This is the matte formula, or the original formula of FolkArt acrylics. The colors I'm working with tonight are all part of the Let's Paint Live kit. It's a beautiful kit that's available on Plaid's website, and it has, again, 24 2-ounce bottles of a beautiful palette of colors. And in that kit, you'll also receive a set of 10 of the artist brushes. I'm going to be working with some of the brushes from this pack tonight. So let's go ahead, maybe and go overhead, Stephen.
Sure.
And let's just jump right in because we've got a lot to cover tonight. I'm going to raise this up and show you very close what our project looks like tonight. So here is the top of the canvas. And then as I scroll down towards the bottom of the canvas, you can see we have some siding to paint. We have a windows, and we have a little window box, and of course some really fun dibby-dabby type florals that are going to be in our window box. So we're going to go ahead and begin painting tonight by getting, and if you're painting along with me, I'd love to know that. Let Stephen know if you are painting along or if you're just watching this evening, because it's always fun to know those that would like to paint along versus watch and paint later. The first colors I'm going to put on my palette is the FolkArt Wicker White. And I'm going to put out a pretty good size amount. If you don't have wicker white, you could always use titanium. And I'm also going to put out just a little bit of our medium gray. So we're going to use medium gray and our white right now. And if you don't have the medium gray, obviously with the black, the licorice that's in the kit, you can mix up some black and white and create a medium gray. We're going to begin our project tonight by doing the siding around the window first. Then we'll work on the window, and then we'll work on the window box, and then we'll work on the florals. And that's kind of the order in which we're going to do it. The trim that you see here on the edge and a little bit that spills over the top will be one of our last minute details, as well as some detail of some line work that I have on my piece here too. So let's go ahead and begin. Let's see, I'll set that off to the side so you can still see it. I have mine on a canvas panel, and I actually taped mine. I put a painter's tape like loop on the back, and I taped mine down so that I would have a nice sturdy piece to hang on to, rather than trying to hold the actual size of the canvas and not get paint on my fingers. That's the only reason I have mine, and I have it on a piece of crescent illustration board. I just put it on the back of that. So that if you're wondering what I'm working with, I have my canvas here, and it is taped to an illustration board.
Chris, I wanted to read this comment from Diane.
Sure.
We have lots of people saying that they're watching along to paint tonight. There's some saying they are going to paint later. But I like Diane's comment. She said, I have joined and I needed a fun break from basement wall painting.
Oh.
You're taking a break from painting to do some painting. You know,
Yeah.
that's commitment. That's hardcore.
a true believer right there, right?
Love that.
Well, thank you, Diane, for changing your painting
Yeah.
to be with us. So I have out on my palette our white, and again, my white was the wicker white, and I also put out a puddle of the medium gray. In my hand is the number 12 flat brush, and I'm just going to fill that number 12 flat brush with our white acrylic here. I am stroking into the puddle, flipping the brush over, and filling both sides of that flat brush. I have a brush that's really nice and full of that white paint. And I'm just going to start at one side, working my way over to the other side. And I'm just applying this in long, smooth strokes. And you'll notice too, when I transferred my pattern, I did transfer the vertical lines for our siding. And I'm just going to do one little panel here. I've got a little booger there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a little bit of that gray. I'm brushing into the puddle of the medium gray, just brushing a corner of it in. And I'm going to go right up next to the edge of that canvas. And again, just long, smooth strokes, kind of just putting a little bit of shading there right on the edge of that canvas. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little piece of paper towel here and just wipe that off. I'm not cleaning my brush. I'm not getting my brush wet. I'm taking the time now to refill it with some more white, and I'm going to stroke up right up next to what will be our next little stripe here. So I'm using the wicker white in long vertical moves, and I'm going to just brush it straight up and down, and then I'm going to come back and side load a little bit more of that medium gray, and I'm going right up next to where that other next siding line would be. Now don't worry about trying to make it exactly perfect because they're going to be kind of blurred. It's okay for them to be a little wiggly. It's okay for them to be a little blurry. We're going to come back and do some detail work on top of this at the very end of our design. So it's okay just to put a nice smooth little line of the gray and then kind of work it in back and forth. And now I'm going to wipe that off, pick up more white, and move on to the next section. I will work around the window box and will work around the window. So we're just going to work a section of the vertical siding here at a time. Again, picking up a little bit more gray. And I, again, am just doing long kind of smooth strokes to kind of blend that into the background. This, again, is just the background. We're keeping it very simple and just kind of moving along as quickly as you can. I'm going to wipe that gray out and repeat, constantly repeat. And in this part now, I'm starting to get to the top and the bottom. I'll have less of a full line. So we're just going to add a little bit at the top and a little bit at the bottom, and we'll move on until we have that whole entire design painted the white and then shaded with the gray. Any questions at this point in time, Stephen?
Don't think so. We had somebody asking for the supply list, and so I've put it in the link, or
Okay.
a link in the YouTube chat, and if you guys need that, either on Facebook or on YouTube, you can find the link in the description.
Great, great. Thank you for that, Stephen. Yeah, there's a supply list, and when you look at that supply list, you'll also notice that we provided the line art pattern for this design as well. So I'm just going to add another little plank here, vertical plank between our window box and the design above the window. Adding more white in between. If I were to paint this whole entire background white first, then come back and do my gray stripes, chances are your white background might be a little dry or set up already, and you'll find that you may not get as smooth of a blend. So that's why I am just doing a little bit at a time, and I am adding the gray wet on wet, allowing that to kind of blend right in with that white background. So you can make your planks pretty much the same size, like maybe a 1/2 inch apart, or make them a little different here and there so that there is a little bit more variety to the plank of your house. And you'll notice too, as I am blending these in, I am not being a perfectionist as far as blending in every single panel the same way. The technique is the same, but the highlight or the shadow part is a little bit different. And that's okay. We want to show a little bit of interest in that house exterior. So again, I'm just adding the white, stopping to pick up a little bit of that gray from time to time. That gray is a beautiful medium gray color. These acrylics blend so beautifully. I'm going to stop and put a little bit of the gray here along the window box and up this one side. We'll come back and do the other side here in just a minute. And while I'm working on this wet on wet, it is blending in really pretty. I hope yours is too, those of you that are painting along with me tonight. Those of you that are painting tonight, I hope that you will share your work. Those of you that plan to paint this again later, maybe when you're more fresh in the morning. I realize sometimes starting to paint at 8 o'clock at night might be a little difficult for some folks, especially if you're a morning person. Do be sure to share your work with us. We love to see what you are doing. We have a beautiful Facebook community called Let's Paint with Plaid. If you're not yet a member, I would love to invite you to join us there. Again, it's Let's Paint with Plaid. You can take a picture of your work and post it there, share it with us. It's a beautiful Learn to Paint community. Everyone is very friendly, and we love to cheer each other on by sharing our work. We always use the hashtag Let's Paint Challenge, and that is a great way for all of the good folks here at Plaid to be able to see your work as well. Even Stephen White paints with us every now and then. Right, Stephen?
Yeah, I just kick-started my painting career last month sometime with Andy for our YouTube series.
Yes, you did, and you did such a beautiful job.
Thank you.
We have a YouTube series with Andy Jones. It's called Art Talk with Andy, and Stephen was one of the visitor artists.
Yeah, I had a guest appearance on the show. Andy taught me to paint a sunflower. That was the first painting I've done in my adult life. So that was quite the experience.
And you painted beautifully.
Well, thank you. We had a question about
Yes.
what kind of pad you are using for your palette.
This right here, my palette, it's very large. It's 18 by 24 inches. This is a waxed paper palette. It comes on a pad, and you can tear off a sheet, one sheet at a time. This is waxy on the top side, perhaps in the sheen here in the light you can see the waxiness. It's perfect for working with acrylics. The back side has more of a matte finish to it. And this is a waxed paper palette that I am using. And these waxed paper palettes come in a variety of sizes, but this one here is, I think, the Mac Daddy. It's 18 by 24. All right, I've got my siding on in place, and what I would love to do now is just to use, I've kind of rinsed out some of the colors that I had. I'm going to pick up just the medium gray now in my dirty brush, and I want to go around with the medium gray. We're going to go around this window. You can see there's a little bit more darkness here, especially at the top of the window and down the sides. Right now we're not going to worry too much about the bottom. Just go around both sides and the top of your and this side we kind of really have a nice dark shading in around the window. We're going to just kind of pat some of that gray on right up and along the top of that window. So just kind of pull that gray right next to the window frame and just kind of pat some of that on. What we're doing is we're kind of shading some of that color right up and around the window frame. And then we're going to bring it down on this side as well. So I have some here, and I'm just going to keep patting it on this area here. So again, it's the top and both sides of our window frame. A little bit more gray. And then I'm going to also bring it just around the top of our window box. Now the window box is going to end up with a lot of florals in it, so you really won't see too much of this shading down here, but you can kind of do that just to kind of set your window box in place. All right, now let's go ahead and I'm going to rinse that gray out of my brush. We're going to work with our white again, but let's add just a little bit of our blue out onto the palette, and the blue I'm working with is True Blue. So you just need a little bit of True Blue out onto the palette. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start working on the panes of the glass in between. When we look at our pattern too, I want to tell you that there are kind of two top full panes showing, and then there's just a portion of the next two panes showing. The space allows here that you probably could even have the beginning of a third pane down, but our flowers come up so nice and high from the window box, we're not going to worry too much about equalizing the shape or the size of these window panes. So what I'm doing now, using that same brush and my same white, I'm going to go ahead and paint in one square at a time. So for me, I'm just starting in the upper left corner here. I am painting the pane of glass, the white square. Don't worry about the woodwork right now, just the white square. And I am painting that in a nice solid square with nice straight lines, or as straight a line as you can get. I'll show that up real close to you. It's just painted white. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, while I still have the white in my brush, I'm going to brush up into the puddle of our blue, and just a tiny corner of that flat brush is going to go into that blue. We're going to pull some of that color out and really blend it here on my palette so that I'm making a very pale light blue. And with that loaded on just one corner of my flat brush, I am going to take that white and that very, very pale blue on the corner of the brush. And when you look at our window panes, if you think of like an inverted L shape, we're going to start in the up left corner, and we're going to blend down, and we're also going to blend across. We're going to keep it white diagonally down across from that. So up in the upper upper left hand corner, we're going to just start patting on some of that blue. And if you feel like your blue is too dark, stop and add a little bit more white to it. If you feel like there's not enough blue in your blue, like maybe perhaps you've gotten it too light, you can come back and you can even add a little bit more blue, but you don't want it as dark as the beautiful blue color is as it comes out of the bottle. So we're blending on the palette to kind of soften that and create a very pale blue there. And you can see I am just kind of patting that color down on the left-hand side of that window. Now I'm going to take it and from the top of the window, pat that color on and across the top. And then we're going to kind of come into the corner and pat it down a little bit. So you want a little bit of blue in that window, but you don't want that blue all the way through the whole window itself. Does that make sense? I sure hope it does.
I think it did.
All right. Let's move on to our second window. I did wipe some of that blue out onto my paper towel. And now we're going to come to the second window. Again, kind of basing it in all solid white first. Make a nice solid square. Watch your lines as close as you can to your pattern lines. And once you have a nice solid white square, we're going to repeat that by picking up a little bit of the true blue, blending it out to a soft pale blue on the palette, and then working it in the same direction, upper left-hand corner, working a vertical stripe all the way down. And you can come back and add a little bit more blue if you feel you want to. I'm doing mine a little bit darker so it makes sure that it shows up on the camera. And then we'll go across the top of the window, again with just keeping that blue next to the woodwork. So I'm doing that, and then I'm going to come back and go into the corner here where we meet and pull some of that down into our window. So there's 2 windows down. It's very, very simple. Very easy. We're going to repeat that process for the next 2 spaces that are going to be our windows. So I am picking up more white. I did wipe off my brush onto the paper towel to remove some of that excess blue. And once I get another pane of glass that's painted white, I can now pick up a little bit more white and then go to our blue and repeat that step, making a lighter blue value on the palette. All of our blending usually stops and starts on the palette. We do a lot more work on the palette than we do actually on the project itself. The palette is kind of like your test place. That's where you can test your colors, make sure your brush loads are appropriate, make sure you have your color blended right. And now we have our 3rd window done. It moves pretty quickly once you kind of get the hang of what it is you're supposed to do, because it is a lot of repetition right now at this point. So I'm on my 4th window, and again I kind of rinsed out or cleaned out or wiped out the blue that was in my brush, and I'm just kind of filling this in with our white. Now of course I'll come back and get our true blue one more time. And this is a project that's very simple. It doesn't have to be very exacting, but when you think about architecture and you think about doors and windows and plumb lines, lines are usually on homes, well, I don't know if they're ever really completely plumb unless you have a super builder, but you do want to make sure that when you're painting this window, you do get your woodwork fairly straight and even. And that will be our next step. I'm going to go ahead and clean out that blue. So I'm going to rinse my brush right now. And what I'm going to do is pick up more of our white. And this is why we put a pretty good size amount of white out onto our palette. I'm still using the same brush. I haven't changed. This is a number 12 flat. And the last part of our window here that we're going to do is the white woodwork all the way around. And as I bring this up, I'm going to show you really close that white woodwork is not completely solid white. This is where we're going to pick up a little bit of our gray, and we're going to shade right up next to where the panes of glass are. So let's just work one vertical stripe at a time. So let's begin here maybe on the left side of our window and just do this left side of the woodwork. So I'm going to turn my piece, and I am going to use the chisel edge of my brush and just kind of paint very smooth and even as I can right up next to that pane of glass and the blue that we've already painted there. And then I'm going to pull it across the width of this piece of woodwork. I'm going to flip it and use the chisel edge of my brush again to kind of go right up next to that siding line. So now I have a nice smooth vertical piece of woodwork for the left side of the window. Before we move on, and while my white is still wet, I'm going to take the full flat of the brush and just stroke into this gray a little bit. So I'm not side loading the brush this time, and I'm not loading just a corner of the brush. I'm stroking the full brush into it, and you can see that I have white on one side of my brush. When I flip it over, I have just a little bit of that medium gray. And what I'm going to do, excuse me, is still using the chisel edge of my brush. I am going to just kind of scoot that brush back and forth so that I'm creating just the slightest little bit of shading here on the left piece of woodwork, but it's to the right side of it. So it's right up next to the glass here. So I have just the lightest little bit of gray shading on that white woodwork. All right, and we're going to repeat that step now for the other 3 sides. So I'm going to scoot right now onto the other side, so the right side of the woodwork. And let's go ahead and use that chisel edge of the brush. And I'm just kind of wiggling that brush back and forth along the edge of the siding. And then we'll flip my piece around and we'll go right up next to the panes of glass. And let's see here. Right up next to the panes of glass. This again is wicker white. If you didn't have wicker white, you could use your titanium white. Using the chisel edge to kind of zigzag, if you will, back and forth, or seesaw back and forth here. It's just really helping us getting a nice, smooth, straight line. Now what I'm going to do is pick up a little bit of that gray again, medium gray, and we're going to go right up next to the pane of glass. And again, in a vertical, straight up and down motion. I turn my piece sideways so it helps me. I'm actually going left to right and right to left. But I am putting a little bit of that gray there on that piece of woodwork. Wiping my brush, and now I'm going to pick up my white again, and I am going to go across the top of our window frame here. We still have the divider pieces to do, but we're going to do this first piece next. We doing okay over there, Stephen?
Yeah, we're doing good.
Any questions from anyone yet?
Don't think so, but if you guys have any questions, let me know.
Yeah. So I have a nice chisel edge here, and I've painted up right next to the panes of glass. Flipping my piece around. Going to do the exact same thing here at the top of the window, using the chisel edge of my brush to kind of smooth out that line. Make sure your corners are square or plumb. We're going to pick up a little bit of that medium gray on the flat of the brush, and we're going to go again right up next to our panes of glass, kind of going back and forth here. All right, now I'm going to wipe my brush one more time, and we have 2 more panes of glass, I'm sorry, 2 more pieces of woodwork, and that would be our vertical and our horizontal crossbars, if you will, here between the window. So we're going to begin again with the white paint, wicker white, number 12 flat brush. Use the chisel edge, and I'm doing the horizontal first. And I'm going to do each window a little bit separately. Using the chisel edge, go right up next to your pane of glass. Flip your piece around, and you're going to go right up next to the other pane of glass. A lot of repetition tonight. Kind of once you learn the little trick, then you can just kind of keep repeating it onto the next section. I'm going to pick up my medium gray, and on this part we're going to do on both sides. We're going to go next to the pane of glass here at the bottom of this piece of wood. We'll flip it around, and we're going to put some Payne's gray, or the medium gray there, along the pane on the top of that horizontal bar. So the gray is going to be next to the panes of glass, both on the top and the bottom. And just kind of wigging and wagging it back and forth there. And our last piece of wood, the last structure piece here, is going to be our long vertical piece. And this, again, we're just going to go using that chisel edge of the brush and our white. We're going to do the full length rather than the 2 separate parts that we just did. Chisel edge, I'm just kind of seesawing that brush back and forth, flipping it around, adding it again on the other side. There we go. There we go. And what I'm going to do now with the gray is the same thing. The gray is going to be shaded right up next to both panes of glass. So we're going to do a little bit there and a little bit on this side. So I am using the white in my brush and the medium gray to kind of shade these little crossbars between the panes of the windows. And that is our window for tonight. We're not going to worry about this bottom part here because again our flowers are coming up. So let's quickly begin to work on the window box itself. And that I did with the color cinnamon. So you want to go ahead and squeeze out just a small amount of cinnamon. And I heard a couple people ask me today, if you don't have cinnamon, what would be another good color? Cinnamon is a very golden light brown color. It's kind of like a raw sienna. If you didn't have the cinnamon, you could use raw sienna. If you don't have a raw sienna, you could even just use a yellow ochre. There's so little of this window box showing, but it's kind of a golden brown color is what I did there. So for now, let's just go ahead and take our number 12 flat brush. I did not clean it, but I did wipe out the excess gray and white. And let's just quickly, again, use that chisel edge and kind of give ourselves a top of the window box line. And we're going to paint this window box in very, very quickly. So I'm using that chisel edge of my brush to kind of draw a nice straight line. We'll do the same thing for the sides of our window box. And some of your window boxes, depending upon how healthy your flowers are, some of the window box may not show as much. So don't worry about that at the end, but just try, if you can, when you're painting it now, paint it as nice and straight as a design as you can. If by chance your flowers don't have as much miracle grow as your neighbors, you'll want to make sure that your lines of your window box are fairly smooth and straight. All right, so I've got mine kind of painted in, and I'm painting it from the left to the right, right to the left. In other words, I'm going horizontal as I paint that in. I'm going to grab one more color right now, and that is our thicket. Thicket is your dark green. If you don't have thicket, sap green would be really pretty to work with too. And we are going to shade this window box with a little bit, I didn't clean my brush, I still have my cinnamon in it. And we're going to tip a corner and stroke into the puddle of the sap green. And I am going to just kind of take sap green along the edges of this window box and also along the bottom. So it's sap green and or thicket that I'm using to blend into the sides and the bottom of our window box. And once you kind of have that in, again, a lot of that's going to be covered, you can take and fill your brush one more time with that thicket or sap green on the corner of the brush. Then what I want you to do is use the chisel of your brush and just kind of make some lines going across. So I am stroking into that green, and then I am pulling some lines across on the sides of the window box. And then I'll do it from the other direction as well. I'm keeping the green to the outside edge of the window box using the chisel edge of the brush, and I'm adding just a little bit of the green along the way. All right? And that is all I'm going to do there. All right, now I'm going to clean that out, and I'm going to add another color to our palette. And this is our lighter green, and that is lime green. While we're at it, let's go ahead and add some of our apple red. We're going to make our flowers both red and some pinks, and we're going to use apple red for that, and we're going to use apple red and some white to create our pinks. But before we get our florals started with all of these flowers, well, let's go ahead and get some greenery in. I'm still working with that number 12 brush, but this time I'm going to put a little bit of water in my brush. I want the paint to be a little bit more fluid. So I've got my brush wet, and then I'm going to drop it on my paper towel here and touch it to blot off some of that excess water. And I'm going to take a little bit of our darker green here, which is our thicket, with that wet brush. You can see it's starting to thin down a little bit here on the side of my palette. And I'm going to load that brush, and then instead of using the brush flat, I'm going to turn the brush upright so that I'm tipping just a corner of the brush down onto my design here. And what we're going to do is we're going to do with the corner of the brush down, let me hold this up so you can see. With the corner of the brush down, we're just going to start tapping and dabbing and making a little loose, very, very loose foliage. When I want you to look at this, what we're doing is we're kind of doing these clumps of color. We're going to do the dark green first, and then we're going to come back and add some lime green and some white together to kind of do our lighter green. So right now we're just kind of creating the background filler of our window box. So I'm going to start here, and I'm using the corner of my brush, and I'm just kind of tapping down. It's going to be thicker here at the base, and then it'll come out and start getting thinner. And you can see here I just kind of tapped in a very open, not closed form, a very open form. And this is where you can determine how full, excuse me, of a floral design you want. Some of your greenery may spill over in front of our window box, and that's perfect. If you find that yours is a little bit too thick in the color, it's a little too opaque, you're not getting enough on here in a very more watercolor loose effect, add some more water to your brush, and I am just dabbing here and there.
Chris,
Yes.
would you be able to slide your canvas up just a little bit? Because I'm going to zoom in on it.
Sure, sure. You tell me where.
That's good.
Right here?
Yep.
Okay. Is that looking good for
Yep.
you? Okay. Do people want to see this up close?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay, let's do that. Again, I'm using not the flat of the brush. I've turned the side of the brush that has the paint in it upside so that it's now like straight up and down. I'm using just the corner of my brush, and I'm just kind of patting or tapping. And you can tap across the window box to kind of give yourself a base, but you can also bring some of those down like in clumps and tap down, so it's going to be wider as it's closer to the window box, and maybe it's going to be a little more, as it begins to trail, it's going to become more thin. So we're going to do this all with our thicket, and this is where you can have the pattern in front of you, the picture in front of you. We can look at my sample here. It's really, no two window boxes have to be painted the same. This is where you really can have a little bit more creative license, if you will. Maybe your flowers are a little more prolific. Maybe you've put more Miracle-Gro in your window box than what I have here in mine. If by chance you didn't like some of the panes of glass, you could even come up a little bit higher in your glass. But this is all we really need to do now to kind of start. This is all done with the thicket. So the next color we're going to do, and I'll show you this up real close so you can see my window box. The next color we're going to do will be our lighter value green, and that is our lime green. So I'm going to take a little bit of the lime green over here to a clean spot, and that was just a little bit that I picked up on the corner of my brush. And I am going to now kind of dab some of that lime green on, and some of it will be new patches by itself. Some of it will be more on top of, and we can add a little bit of water. Some of it will be a little bit on top of the green that we already have there. So again, I'm just kind of lightening that thicket maybe. That thicket then now becomes kind of a background to what we already have here. You don't have to do every single piece that you've already done with the thicket. We don't want to completely cover the thicket, but add a little bit here and there. Maybe even add another little sprig by itself. Some of this can go outside of, here's my sample if you want to see mine. Here's a good example where I said some of it can go outside. You can still see the thicket here, but maybe you can now really see the lime green towards the outside edge. While I'm still working with the lime green in my brush, I'm going to add just a little bit of our white to it. So now we're really going to have a lighter value, bright, bright green. And I'm going to tap on some of that little bit of a color here and there as well. And again, this is all done with a little bit of water in the brush so that there's quite a bit of moisture. And I am using the corner of my brush, still tapping that on. And I am working kind of still wet on wet, so some of this might be a little bit wet from our thicket and our lime green applications underneath. And here's mine. I'm going to show you mine. So right now you can already see there's a little bit of dimension going on with that very loose background of our greenery. Now we're going to do basically the same exact thing, but we're going to start with flower heads. I'm cleaning the green out of my brush because for our flower heads we're going to start with the red. And the red is our apple red. And when you look at my sample, I'll bring my hero up again if you want to see the hero. This is kind of like a circle. They're not exactly solid pom-poms. You can see my shapes are irregular. They're very painted loose and irregular and kind of almost with little bumpy edges, if you will. So I'm going to use my brush with water in it. I'm going to side load into my apple red. I want my first application to be a little bit runny or more fluid in color. I'm still doing that little tapping on the corner of my brush, and I'm going to begin filling in some flowers. So let's start with a flower over here maybe. And I am tapping, kind of creating a circle or a pattern of a round flower, but we do not want it to be an exact ball or shape. Can you see the irregular bumps around the outside of that? It's kind of circular in shape, but there's irregular bumps to the outside. We don't want solid little circles. And now is where you're going to go ahead and paint in as many of these red flowers as you want. This is not the last step of this red flower, so we'll come back and add more. Again, I'm using the corner of my brush, and I'm kind of just tapping that corner of the brush with irregular patterned shapes. And I'm filling my brush every so often. Some of my flowers have a little bit more red, apple red to them. Some have a little bit more of a watery effect because of the moisture in my brush, and that is perfect. This goes on very quickly, so don't labor over this part. And I think I'm going to put one more on mine. Maybe, let's see. Maybe one right up in here. All right, now I have just red little irregular shaped kind of blobs of color to represent some of our very loose florals on there. What we want to do on these little red circles of flowers, and I kind of think of these as like being geraniums, we're going to shade the lower half of that circle. And that is our next step. So while I still have my brush loaded with a side of the apple red, we're now going to kind of brush onto the side there. The same side of the brush that has my apple red in it, I'm now going to scoot up into our thicket. And we're going to work the thicket and the apple red together. And that's going to kind of create a little bit of a burgundy brush mix. And we now have a dark shading color, and we're going to do the same thing with this brush, holding it straight up and down, tapping just the corner of the brush on the lower section of these red flowers. And I did just this one right here. Can you see the burgundy now that's shading on the bottom of that flower? That's what we want to do. And you can see that this is going to go very quickly. Just tapping that burgundy and that color mix again. I'm using my number 12 brush. It was loaded with the apple red. Then I added some sap green to the same side that had the apple red. I blended on the palette, and that's what gave us our burgundy color. So I have apple red and a little bit of sap green. I'm adding and blending some more on my brush. And then I'm using again just the corner of that brush to kind of tickle the bottom of these little round shapes. So we're shading the bottom of these flowers. There we go. And now we want to highlight the top of those flowers. Again, kind of using that tapping motion. What we're going to do now is we're going to load the brush with the apple red. And now I'm going to take away some of our white, our wicker white and our apple red, and we're going to make a pink. So I have apple red on one side of the brush. I have wicker white on the other side, blending on the palette. That's creating a pink for me. And I'm just going to tap the top of these flowers with a little bit of pink. And I'm showing you on this one right here, this is one that's already got some of the pink tapped on there. So very quickly, we're going to tap on some highlights on some of our red flowers using the brush that is loaded with the apple red and the wicker white. Tap, tap, tap. Again, remember these are irregular shapes. You don't want them to be smooth and round at the top. All right. Now while we have this pink in our brush, let's go ahead and make some pink flower forms as well. So we are blending again on the palette. This is the apple red and the wicker white. We've made a pink. So some of our flowers now need to be filled in with a little bit of pink highlights. Now these pink balls, as you look at my hero here, here's one, here's another one. I made these much smaller in size, more of a filler. Again, using the corner of my brush, just patting and tapping, dancing across there. I'm going to add a little bit of the pink ball flower or geranium here and there. Let's see, I'll add one right here. Maybe one more up here. Now, while we have our pink flowers in place, we're going to come back with some apple red on the corner of the brush. Apple red will be our shading color for these pink flowers. So we're going to simply tap on the bottom of the flower using, again, the corner of the brush. Apple red is the shading color for our pink flowers. And our highlight is going to be the pink with a little bit more of our white. So I'm going back to where I was loading and making that pink color. And I'm going to tap now with a little bit of that white. So again, tonight's project has been a lot of repetition, kind of once you kind of got started and knew what you were doing. Very simple too, that people of all ages could paint this because like you can see we're just kind of tapping and dabbing. We use just the chisel edge of our brush to kind of do the straight lines. And now what we're going to do is on my piece here we have a few little stalks or a few little filler flowers in our design. We're going to put our brush down and switch to excuse me, our #1 liner here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this one. What we're going to do with our #1 liner is we are going to start with our darker green first. So I'm going to take some of that thicket and I'm going to add some water to it on my liner brush, thinning it down. I want this paint to be a little bit more fluid so that I can, in fact, paint a line or draw a line with this. So we're going to use just the tip of this round brush, and we're going to, from the window box, we're going to pull some of these little stalks out. All right? So I'm going to begin here at the window box from the flowers, and I'm going to pull a little line out of my thicket. And that is my dark green. And we're just going to pull these out from here. Start adding a little bit more paint to mine. Let me set this down and pick this up so you can see, and my hand's not in the way. And I'm going to pull some out on this side. You don't have to have a lot of these, but just a few here and there. Maybe one short little one there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this same brush, but with the thicket full paint. And I'm going to load that round brush with the thicket. And now what I'm going to do on each of these, here's our little stalk. On each of these little stalks, I am going to, like from this stem or from the stalk line, I'm going to touch down and pull out. Touch down and pull out. Touch down and pull out. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to touch down and pull out. Touch down and pull out. So we're kind of making like a little bit of a filler with that greenery. So on each of these little stalks, I'm just going to touch down and pull out, making very tiny little leaves, and some, maybe one at the top. So I just did one side of that one there. It's a very quick movement. Again, we're just touching and pulling. Here, let me pull it up this way. Maybe you can see better. Touching and pulling, touching and pulling, touching and pulling. And I'm trying to let each of those little touch pull marks to create a pair of leaves on either side of our stalk line. So we're touching, pulling, touching, pulling. And at the very end of each of those little lines, I've added another one. So we're just filling in here and there. And I'm going to continue on this side here. Just really quickly. It's a very quick motion when you do this. I'm using just the tip of the brush. So I don't have a lot of pressure down on my stem. And as soon as I touch, I am just applying very little pressure, pulling and lifting. I want just a very quick little lift. With that little lift is where you're going to get the tip of the leaf. If it helps you do one side and then switch to the other side, it might be easier for you to do it that way. I like to go up and down one side of the vein or the stalk and then come back and do the other side. All right, so now I have all of mine with the thicket on there. Now what I want to do is I want to accent some of mine. And as you look at mine really close, the green was our base. The thicket that we just put down was the base for each of these little stalk fillers. Now we can come back and we can add some of the lighter green. We can also come back and add some of our reds and our pinks. So I'm going to add just a few of our lime green right now. Didn't clean out my brush. I just picked up some of the lime green. And what I'm going to do is just maybe add another leaf or two here and there if you have a little bit of a space. And this is more of an accent color. It doesn't have to be as many dark leaves, as many as the dark leaves. So we're just adding a little bit of a lime green filler leaf here and there. Not a lot, just a few. And let me just show you real quick on this one here. Look at this side here. There's very few little lime green leaves. They're more of an accent. They're not a lot. Now what we want to do is we want to clean the green out of our brush, and we're going to now go straight to our apple red. With the apple red now, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to stroke towards that stalk rather than pulling out from it. So for these little filler flowers, let's look at this stalk right here. I'm going to start with the dark red, and then we'll come back and we'll do some pink in between. So I am going to touch down with the tip of my brush, and I'm going to pull into the stalk. Where we pulled out of the stalk this way, I'm going to come in and pull in to the stalk with our red flowers. Let me show that up close so you can see. I stroked into the stalk. So this is where you can fill in as many. I'll put this right here so you can see while I'm painting. You can stroke in and pull in as many little red flowers as you want. They don't have to be large in size. They can be kind of small and dainty. And and if it strokes over on top of a leaf, that's okay too. And where I did the green, the thicket leaves, like as pairs, you do not have to do pairs with the flower stems. It could be a few on one side and a couple down on the other side, a couple on the left, maybe 3 on the right. It doesn't have to be a pair of flowers on this stalk. For those of you that are painting along tonight, I hope you do share your work with us. Remember to join the Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group and use the hashtag Let's Paint Challenge. We'd love to see your work. This is what mine looks like right now. I have my dark green leaves, I added my lime green leaves, now I added the red little pieces of flowers for our stalk flower. And now what I'm going to do is with the red, and I'm going to bring over some of my white, I'm going to create that pink and add just a few little pink filler flowers here and there. Not a lot, but just a few pink ones. Same direction we're stroking in towards the stalk, opposite of our leaves. And again, it might be fewer than what some of the others were. If you're not getting enough pink, you can even go back and add a little bit of white and kind of give yourself some white little stalks or flowers within the stalk. I'm adding a little bit lighter pink on some of mine. All right, now what we're going to do, I'm going to clean my brush out. And I'm going to go back to that number 12 flat brush. And what I want to do with this is wet the brush. I'm going to put a little bit of our medium gray on one side of the brush. Let's get rid of the red that's in here. Okay. And I'm going to go on this side of the puddle here that I brought over here so I don't get the red in there. And what I'm doing is I am thinning down some of that medium gray on one corner of that flat brush. And what I'm going to begin doing is I'm going to begin putting a little bit of shading around our window box and also maybe creating a few little shadows here from our foliage. So that's all done with this brush loaded with the medium gray and some moisture in the brush. And let's begin first to put a shadow on our little window box. I'm just patting color on here, kind of blending that in, patting along the bottom. And I'm going to go back and deepen this a couple times. So while I'm waiting for that part to dry, let's go ahead and pick up some more of that medium gray. And I'm going to reload my brush so that I still have some moisture in the brush, and I'm thinning that paint down. I'm going to turn that brush straight up and down like we've been doing, not the full flat of the brush. And anywhere where you have some of your greenery hanging over, go ahead and lightly tap, again using the corner of your brush, tap some of that color on to kind of create your little cast shadow. So some of these greenery pieces might have a little bit of a shadow hanging down over onto the siding. And I'm just, again, using the corner tip of that brush to kind of tap some of that color on. And now I'm going to come back and deepen in here, deepen in here a little bit more. Just kind of scrubbing some of that color on. And I'm going to deepen some of this in here. A little bit there. Kind of let it fade out, if you will. And maybe a little bit over here on this side over here too. And I'm tapping that in and kind of blending that a little bit just to kind of create a very faint shadow. All right, now let's go ahead and stop and let's pick up our black, which we do not yet have on the palette. So let's add a little bit of black, and this will be our finishing touches to our painting. The black I'm squeezing out is licorice. If you don't have licorice, you could use pure black. And let's go ahead and use our liner brush. I'm going to thin some of this black down. So I'm bringing some water over here, and I'm thinning that down with water. We definitely want this color to be a little bit more fluid, a little bit more juicy to do some line work. So I am thinning that paint down here off on the side. And what we're going to do with this brush loaded with our black, everywhere that you, well, let's go ahead and start with the window box first, and then we can do the siding. When I hold this up, can you see that there's tiny little black lines around some of our flowers? They're very scribbly, they're very free-form, they're not an exact outline. Do not exact outline your little flowers. So we're going to take that brush, hold it straight up and down to our surface, and we are just going to kind of scribble along that little shape of the flower. It's a very hit or miss. I'll hold this up here close too so that you can see. And let me pull this, let me move this out so you can see even more. There we go. And I am just going to very straight up and down, very free form, kind of wiggle around. Not every single one even. Just mostly it's the larger, big red ones. And it's very, very free form. Very loosey-goosey, if you will. Let me hold one up so that you can see me do one real quick on there too. Watching on this one right here, I'm going to hold my brush straight to the surface, and I'm just going to kind of very wiggly, free form, using just the tip of the brush, go around that flower. I'll do a couple more here on this side. I didn't so much go around the small, tiny little pink ones, but maybe just a couple. And that, I think, is all I'm going to do. Maybe I'll do a little bit more on this one right here. And then what we're going to do is outline the window and do some little scribbly lines too on this siding. So that's one reason why I was saying your siding did not have to be perfect. And I am going to just kind of very, very loose form very lightly, use a little bit of pressure here and there. It's very hit or miss, very much skipping here and there. I'm almost coming off the camera here. And you can do most of them. You don't have to do every single one, but it's a very, very free form, very skippy. And then we'll do the same thing around our window frame too. And I'll show you the window here real close. So on the window itself, we are going to do this little black skippy line. It's almost like you're sketching or drawing around the outside of the entire window, as well as inside around each of these panes. So I'll hold it up real close one more time so that you can see it's very, very, very sketchy. It's not meant to be a perfect, straight, solid line. You're meant to do it very, very sketchy, very free form. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of create just that little bit of a wiggly line around the outside of my window. And this again is very, very thin paint, and using just the tip of your brush. You're just kind of really just tickling the surface. It might help you to do everything all in one direction first. And you would think, well, this looks so fun and easy, and it really, really is. For those of you that are stressed over this, oh my gosh, please do not be stressed. This is what really makes this painting. It kind of gives it more of a painterly appearance. It kind of gives you more of a sketchy artist feel. This to me is kind of like the icing on the cake. And I want you all just to have fun with this sketchy part. Now some of you might be asking, can I please use a magic marker? Can I please just try this with the magic marker? My answer will be yes, because I want you to enjoy your painting, but I want you to learn how to use a liner brush and learn how to do line work. Because looking at that now, when you see this, doesn't that really kind of bring your painting to life and give it more pizzazz? You can even kind of come back and add some lines around the window box if you wanted to add a little bit more there. If this were mine and we had more time, I would deepen my shadows a little bit more underneath my window box as well. Now what I want to do is just tell you what to do to trim yours out. Once you finish all that little black line work, the last thing I did was I did sign my name, and then my canvas was a stretched canvas versus the canvas panel that I'm painting tonight. So I painted the black all the way around the entire edge here of my canvas, and then to kind of give you this trim that you see here on the outside edge of this piece, it kind of gives you, if you think about deckled edged paper, that's what it's supposed to try and mimic or give you an idea of. So I'm going to take mine off my tape boards here. And let's say mine was the stretch canvas. I've got my black already painted here on the outside edges. What I'm going to do now, and you can use a 3/4 inch flat brush or still work with the number 12 that you've been working with, get your brush good and full of the paint. And you want the paint to be your black. Mine was licorice. Yours could be the licorice or the pure black. And I'm using the paint solid as it comes from the bottle versus our thinned amount that I have, the little puddle here that I have. So I want solid, thick, black paint. Again, mine is the licorice. And once I load this brush good and full on both sides with my black handle, I'm going to hold the brush like this. And once I've painted the edges all black first, I'm going to hold that brush and just kind of tap along the edges there. Change the direction. I'm going to apply more flat and more paint on it. I'm changing the brush, but I'm just kind of going along that edge. And can you see how it kind of made a very skip-dee-dee-doo type edge? It kind of gives you that feel of a deckled edge. And that is what really makes this painting come to life. I'm going to go ahead and paint the edge here. And look how now with that black edge, and then you have that very hit or miss attempt here on the outside edges, it just really trims your painting. So again, I'm going to do this edge, kind of changing the direction of my piece, the piece I'm holding, as well as maybe my arm that has the brush in my hand. So I want some to be an overlap, like this here has a lot more paint on it here than it does some of the other areas. I think it makes it so much prettier when you don't have a repeat. You don't want it to look like a stencil, and you don't want to repeat the same design along the whole edge. So make some a little bit more with more paint, some with a little bit less paint. Any questions on this technique here?
Not, sorry, not on this technique. We had somebody asking if you had to do anything differently to put this on a card.
Oh, yeah, somebody else was asking or saying in our Let's Paint group that this would make a beautiful card design. I think so too. I agree with whomever had made that statement. If you were doing this design on a note card, let me think, is there anything different? I don't think so. I think all of the decisions and all of the techniques that I taught tonight would be exactly the same.
Great.
Any other questions, Stephen?
I think we're good.
Okay. So this is window box floral. Very, very simple, very easy. I think you could even gather the kids and have the kids come and paint along with you. It's just a very simple few amount of colors, a 6x6 size. I think the design is really very, very cute. And of course, you could change out for the summertime, and it could even be maybe blue florals, and it could be look like maybe it's hydrangea flowers in there versus maybe today, I'm taped now down to the palette. Maybe today it looks more like, what do I want to say, geraniums? Perhaps?
Yeah, we had somebody say that earlier.
Yeah.
If you're looking for the pattern, you can find it in the description of this video. Whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you'll find it, or you can find it on plaidonline.com.
Well, I think I'm going to not try and get this off. I set it down and the tape was still on the back. That was my problem. Here, there we go. Okay, so there we go. So here is window box floral. And Stephen's right, we provided the pattern for you. So I hope that you do go get the pattern, look at the supply list. All of the paint colors that I used tonight were used on the Let's Paint Live kit, and that is, again, the FolkArt matte acrylics. I had a lot of fun with you all tonight. Any other last minute questions, Stephen?
I think we're good.
Okay. Well, thank you all so very much for joining me. I hope you all had a good time tonight too. I cannot wait to see your window box florals. And be sure and use the hashtag Let's Paint Challenge. Join our Facebook group, Let's Paint with Plaid. If you have not yet already, we'd love to see you there. Until next time, oh, let me give you a sneak peek. I said until next time. Next time is going to be next Monday night. Let me give you a sneak peek. Who wants a sneak peek?
I think we got some people looking forward to it.
Okay. Well, next week in this chair, you'll find Emma Panuski. And Emma is going to be teaching this project. So that would be February the 13th, just in time for Valentine's Day. So grab your significant others, grab your girlfriends, have some Valentine's night fun, and paint this along with Emma Panuski. This project is called
Love Potion.
Yeah, Love Potion number Be Mine. So come paint a Love Potion design with us for next week with Emma. And in the meantime, I thank you all for painting window box floral here with me. I'm Chris Williams, and I hope you all had a great time.